Life of love. Life of love. With Joy Wilson.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather every week to bring forth a message for you to connect to your divinity, to remember how special you are, and maybe just encourage you on days where things seem sticky or rough, and just recognize and hold space for those times where things aren't going the way you think they should be going, but we're here to say these are cycles, and you're gonna, with your intention and your efforts and your trust, things can turn around. And, if you're feeling lost or you're feeling helpless, please seek help professionally. But we're here to help just give you a little boost. And I honor your ears. I really appreciate everyone who's been sharing these episodes. It's been amazing. And today's a really special day because we get to talk to somebody who's really connected to some fun spiritual insights and experiences. And Carolina Gutierrez is here from Toronto, right?
Correct, yeah.
From Canada, yes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Julie. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just want to share a little bit of your bio because you've been busy. Since the age of 4, Carolina has been connected to spirit, and she believes in living a grounded life that is led by spirit. And so this special connection is her calling. She helps clients and business owners discover the importance of intuition first and challenging them to think about work and life from the inside out. So just, living your highest purpose through spirit is what she's all about. And she's also passionate about mental wellness that comes from a spiritual life and her wisdom. So we're really excited. She's got a blend of social work and spiritual guidance that it gives her a unique perspective on helping people. So her website's amazing. I'll put a link to it in the bio. I just really am excited to pick your brain, Carolina. Again, thanks again for spending this time with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm getting excited just feeling your excitement. So this I think this is going to be a good conversation.
I know. It's like, wow, every guest I have on, I'm really excited about. But this one's really touching because I just was talking about my late grandmother and her passage, and it's really in my field about this ancestral thing. But before we jump into the ancestral, and I want everyone to hang around to the end because this is going to be a great episode. And if you have to pause it and come back, save it because it's going to be worth your time. What I want to kick off our conversation is about trust. And when you're talking about trusting yourself and learning to trust yourself again, I just wanted to pick your brain about that and just let you riff on that idea of trust, because I know you have so much knowledge on it, and I know it's going to be a great perspective.
Wow. Okay. I better do a good job then. So, yeah, I think we're so trained to not trust ourselves. I think that there's so many things in life, especially as a woman, but I think in general it applies as well, that we are really we reach a point in adulthood where we're like, I don't know anything. I don't know what to do. Like it's very lost. And we're so moved away from the idea that we are intrinsic experts in our own life, of our own life, number one. And number two, that we have the map encoded within us of what we're here to do. And, and it's not a straight line, right? Like, I think that's the other difficulty there is, you see these people that at 4, they're like, I'm going to be a doctor. I heard spirit at 4. I had no idea that this would be my life. I had no idea that I'd be sitting here today at 45 talking about this. You could have knocked me over with a feather if I ever thought that I would be a psychic medium and that this would be my calling in life. So, yeah, I think definitely we live in a place where trusting ourselves is not innate. I think it is in childhood, but we're slowly deprogrammed of that as we kind of go through life. And so, you know, I very much make it part of my mission to help people build that internal trust, because whether it's in spirituality or anything else, right? I think building what I call your spiritual independence, right? And being able to know and trust that internal guidance. So you're not always having to go to somebody to kind of get that clarity. Once in a while, sure, we all need that help. Don't get me wrong. But on a regular day to day, when you need it on demand, we should be able to cultivate a practice that allows us to draw upon that innate wisdom that we all carry, whether it's ancestrally, whether it's from your guides, whether it's from your own knowledge base and wisdom, kind of whatever label you want to put that, because there's a lot of places that wisdom, can be opened up to us from. But definitely, I think it's something that we're so missing, and it can be such a game changer.
Game changer indeed. I love that your map is inside you. That so many pearls there. So I guess to break it down, I mean, it comes to second guessing is your clue. Like when you're second guess, is this the right thing to do, or is second guessing tapping into your intuition? I mean, how do you know what state you're in to know if you're knee-jerk reacting? Is it when you're emotional, or are there red flags that you're not using your intuition, or is it something you tune into and say, I'm ready to use my intuition, and this is how I'm going to do it? Like, how do you start?
So I would say recognize that there is not a one solution fits all here. There is, we are all made up uniquely of, whether you look at it as the stars that brought us in, or whether you look at it as the ancestral energy that makes us up, but we all are kind of a unique recipe, right? And so there are general pearls, I think, of wisdom that we can apply, but you need to really kind of hone in on how does it work for you. So I always give this example. I've had certain health issues in my life where I've gone and they've been like, you need to do a cleanse. And I was like, okay. And this probably happened for like at least 20 years. I do the cleanse and my body would react the absolute polar opposite of was it's the way the doctors or the helpers that I was working with would say it was supposed to react. And it's just over and over again. And it was like, right. And so that's just not how it works for me, right? And I think that applies to your intuition as well, because we all get intuition from different areas in our life and in different ways. And we all have what I call a unique intuitive language, right? So the way your team and your spirits that you beautifully called in at the beginning of the show speak to you is not the same way that mine speak to me. And so it's important to recognize what that intuitive language is for you. And that's in my intuition development workshops. That's the first thing that we address is what is that intuitive language? Because, if somebody's in a very shamanic path and they're going to say, well, there was a bird standing on a thing and this is what it meant. And I'm like, some are universal, a few are universal, but most are not. Right. And so it's really important that you understand that this is just as unique as you are. And I think also recognizing a couple of things. Your intuition, very, very, very rarely does it come in panicked. There's this peace. There's this very calm, sure, but whisper-like peace that it shows up in. Now, unless you're about to cross the street and a bus is going to hit you, and then you'll get that you'll get that very pronounced. But usually in your day-to-day, like, don't take the highway, take the street, things like that, it's never going to come in panicked. Okay. Secondly, in most cases, your intuition doesn't usually sound frenetic or repeat itself. So you won't get a no, 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 no. If you're getting a no, 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 kind of like this almost like panicked repetitiveness, chances are it's not your intuition. Once in a while, it might be, very rarely, but that's not usually the case. What I tell people is start with practicing with stuff that doesn't matter. And I think that's a big mistake that people make right off the bat. They go to that big burning question you've had your whole life, that if you had the answer, everything would shift and all of a sudden, your life would change. Don't do that. Please don't do that, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You're setting yourself up for more confusion, and you're setting yourself up for failure, because there's a reason why that's a burning question in your life that has been going on for years and years and years. And there's so much weight and static around it. That's probably a life lesson, right? What you want to do with your intuition is you want to start off with the very inconsequential things, the tiny things that you couldn't care less about, because you want to practice and you want to build that trust to then be able to grow it and start to get a little bit more, those questions start to get a little bit more important and have a little bit more weight in your life.
That's so beautiful and so well said. And it's so, you promised authentic and you are delivering, girl, because that's so authentic that we're all different. We're all coming at it from different keys and different locks. And I love that, because I'm not kidding you. I started with parking spots. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to pull in here and I'm going to get a great parking spot. And that's how I did it. And it's so funny because my sister and then her family, her kids are like, yeah, Aunt Julie and my mom, they always get the best parking spots. And I just think it was something that my mom started in us. I really do. And that's what I want to talk to you about next. And something else that sparked me was trust, like that inner calmness when you're there. You just trust that it's going to work out. One way or the other, it's going to work out. Like something that seemed huge and scary to you last week, you're still alive to think about it, right? Like it's all going to work out. So, trying to find that calm, like you said, that center line that you can tap into your intuition. That's a great insight. And I don't know how long it took me to figure that out on my own, but or maybe it was a class I took. I've read so many self-help books and took so many webinars. And I have a coach, a spiritual coach as well, that helps me navigate when I'm way outside my body and I need to come back, because it's a pattern that I have. So I appreciate your insight. But yeah, then tying it back to the parking spot and how our family just manifests good parking, that I wanted to pick your brain about bringing in your ancestors and talking to your ancestors. And we've had so many people passing lately. I mean, there's been a mass exodus from this earth plane. And so I wanted to pick your brain about connecting your ancestors. And I understand, I didn't realize this, but you told me you have a class coming up that's based on this. So give us a tidbit. What are you working on with that?
Oh, thank you. That's It's my favorite topic. So this is right on topic for me. So I always describe, number one, I think the ancestors are missing from Western practice, period. Stop, full stop. Right. If you go to other traditions around the world, you're going to find that ancestor worship is very integral to kind of the spiritual practices, especially the First Nations of different parts in the world. And unfortunately, that's something that has been lost in a lot of Western practices. But really, the way I describe it to clients is, imagine your favorite song, whatever that song is, and you're hearing it on a guitar. You're like, oh, I love that song. And you can feel it in your soul, and you can feel yourself just rise up to really appreciate that music that's coming through. And you're like, this can't get any better. This is the best song I've ever heard, and it's never going to change. And then all of a sudden you hear that song for the first time with an entire orchestra playing. And you're like, and then the goosebumps come and you're like, oh my God, how could my favorite song get better? And it just did. And you're just feeling the magnitude of that. That's the difference between working with your ancestors in your spiritual practice and not working with them. So it is a very, very impactful thing. And I really think that it is the key to deepening your spiritual practice if it's something that's been missing from it. And my own ancestors have been kind of like, talk about this, like really pushing me to bring it out, because it's such a common thing that comes up when I'm working with clients, whether it's in readings or in healings or clearings or whatever I'm working. I'm like, oh yeah, there's an ancestor or there's an ancestral component coming in, and people are like, what? I don't know anything about it. And so my ancestors really pushed me to develop this 7-part workshop that's coming up in the ancestor season in October. I will be offering the first one for free. It's called Awakening Your Ancestral Memory. And I'm going to have there's a few dates already on my website that are available. You can register. I'm not going to be selling you anything in that workshop. It really is about awakening that ancestral memory within people. I really want to be able to provide that, whether you're, somebody that has means or not. I don't want that to stop you. And then the subsequent workshops, there will be a small fee for them, but it'll be all surrounding the different components. And there's so many. Like I really struggled to kind of figure out what to add and what to keep out, because it's something that we could talk, or at least I could talk for a really long time about, but I wanted to make it digestible and impactful at the same time. So there's a variety of different, we have your ancestors and their connection to the land and to the land spirits and nature spirits. We have tapping into the different energies of their power, right? Like what was their own spirituality? What was their ritual practice like? We also have living with your ancestors in a daily practice. How can you connect with them in different ways that aren't spiritual, but that are at the same time? Because we all have limited time and lots of stuff to do. So how do you incorporate them in? We also have one on your spiritual lineage. So what are the inheritance, gifts, pacts, and conflicts that were facing your ancestors that you actually carry some forward, that a lot of people are like, what do you mean? What do you mean what my grandfather or my 4 times removed grandfather, what his spiritual practice is affecting me today? And it's like, yeah, it has that influence. So it's recognizing that. Also creating your ancestor altar. And if you're a spirit worker of any kind, a light worker, a healer, energy practitioner, how do you work with your ancestors to bring them into your practice? Because there is an innate protective quality to working with your ancestors when you're out in the field. And so how do you bring that forward?
Oh, it's so beautiful. It is so amazing. And they're around us. They just need us to say, "Hey, I'm ready." And something I'm going to share with you. I always was jealous of people who had a family crest. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
and I'm like, my family doesn't have a crest. And I was always like so jealous. Like, and then what came to me is like, you could use AI to create a family crest for your family no matter where you are. Like, why does it have to be something medieval that was passed down? Or if you could connect into your ancestors and create that crest as part of your heritage that you want to pass on, or even just to connect to your ancestors as a visual. Everybody's different, how they, their sense that they like. You sounds like you're a musical auditory person, but some people are visual too. I mean, I was just curious what you thought about those crests, those ancestral.
Well, I think that's a great question, because it shows the importance that ancestry was until very not that long ago,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just from an elite standpoint. Sure, can this be corrupted? Can this be taken? absolutely, just like anything, right? A knife can be used in so many different ways. But if we take the positive of it, or we take the wisdom of that, it was understanding, where do you come from? So, a little tidbit, a little bit of a snippet of what's going to be in my workshop. You would be surprised how many people suffer from or benefit from ancestral pacts that your ancestors made with local land deities, local land spirits,
Oh,
in
wow.
regards to take care of my family and we will blank. We will always tend to your land, or we will always do this, or right. Now, in a time of mass immigration and people moving around, what happens when that isn't being fulfilled anymore?
Yeah, you're not honoring the pact, but you don't
That's
even know
exactly
about
it.
it to honor it.
And you don't even know about it, right? That's exactly it, right?
You
That's
are
just
blowing
one
my
tidbit
mind.
of stuff
Okay.
and there's examples that have shown up. Like, I remember I had one client, it was a fascinating example, because I was telling her, hey, I think you have, and she goes, oh my God, I know what you're talking about. And it's very rare that I get that, because people are usually like, oh my God, you're blowing my mind, very similar to what you were sharing. And she said, she used to have this friend in high school, very, very problematic cystic acne, like covered her face, just very, very serious.
Mm.
She was walking down the street on a summer, it was like August, and this girl said, hey, so and so. And she turned around and she's like, I had no idea who it was. And she's like, it's me. Let's say her name was Mary. It's me, Mary. And she's like, Mary? She said she had perfect, like model, like, just glowing, perfect skin. And she was like, and she said, I know you don't recognize him. It's my skin. And she said, yeah. And she's like, I don't know what it is, but I always fly back in the summer to visit my grandparents in Sweden. And the minute that I land in Sweden, my skin completely clears up. And I'm there and I'm with clear skin for the entire summer. And the minute that I return back home, within 2 days, she goes, I landed yesterday. And she goes, within 2 to 3 days, my skin starts to flare up. She goes, we cannot figure it out. And I'm like, that's a land pack. That's a land spirit pack that some ancestor made that nobody remembers anymore. And it's having not so great consequences in this young person's life.
So that pact is in her field, and our bodies are here to process this information, give us signs to be like, you're on the wrong path. So
It's not
is that
necessarily that she's on the wrong path, but you might have to amend that pact, because we don't live that lifestyle anymore, right?
That's what I was going to ask. Can you cancel, delete these contracts that aren't serving?
It depends on what was made. It depends on how it was made. You have to also put yourself in the mindset of people that lived 1,000 years ago, and how did they live, right? What was the type of spirituality and magic that they practiced, right? What were how many generations were those agreements for, right? Like, there's a lot, it's very open. But that is a component that many of us might suffer in a variety of different ways. I'm not just talking about skin. It could be health, it could be wealth, it could be, your mental health. Who knows, right? Like, there's just so many ways that can show up. But
Yeah, like
it
I could see like
shows.
your peace of mind. Like if there's something nagging at you all the time, it could be one of these
Absolutely.
packs.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Just like you get inherited gifts too, right? So if you had a healer in your line and you're doing this type of work, can you call upon that within your line, right? I've also seen the negative effects of having healers in the line and not calling that energy forward, and then being disassociated from that for the last 3 generations, and how that negatively showed up. That was a very interesting case, because it was showing up in their fertility, and their ability to conceive. Yeah.
So
So
you've seen this play out in your practice. You've gone into the ancestors might show up when you link into their aura, or however their energetic field. You're tapping into that, and they're like, hey, Carolina, can you tell her this? Or can you tell him this?
Sometimes it's like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like they'll come in with an issue and we'll be like, okay, well, where are we
Nice.
going with this issue, right? Because think about it, in essence, we are made up of our ancestors. We are the love of thousands of people in the flesh, right? And so they are, you know, it depends on kind of where your traditional beliefs come from. But from my work and how I work, they are the closest spiritual ally we have. They are even closer than our guides. And I work with my guides every single day. I work with people and helping them connect to their guides. So, like, don't get me wrong, my guides are up on the podium, just as my ancestors are. But so when you're asking, when you're sending a request out, right, and you're like, universe, help me, I want to do this, or I want to accomplish this, include your guides in there, because the universe is hearing a lot of requests. Your
Your
ancestors
ancestors.
are
Yeah.
right there. They're the
And
closest to, and they've
I bet
experienced
it,
physical reality.
yeah, and I bet they're so delighted to have you reach out because they're so close.
Absolutely. And it's, unfortunately, depending on the practice that you have, they might have been long forgotten. And so when, nobody's ever been like, yo, can I get your help type of thing. But just a note with that, not all ancestors are great. We have to keep that in mind, right? So I always recommend, if you're going to start to work with them, work with your elevated ancestors, number one. And number two, ask your main spirit guide to be the intermediary when doing that work, because they can kind of be like, yeah, this is a good idea, not such a good idea, or maybe just with these, or, really build that trust with that guide, so that they can kind of be the moderator in between here.
Nice. I know that your dog is thinking this is an
I
important message.
apologize. I'm so sorry.
Do they need, we can pause if you need to.
No,
if
they're
your dog-
just one of them is very vocal and the other one doesn't make a sound, and they're just looking out the window. So I apologize. It should be over
Oh
soon.
no, it's okay. Wait till school starts. They'll have a lot to look at, right?
Absolutely.
No, they don't bother me at all, but it's interesting during certain parts the animal friends are like, click, 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 like, listen to that. Like, I take it as animals talking, giving their input. So I never mind when there's a little
It's a
interruption.
very, if you think about it, our ancestors turned to nature for their signs, for their confirmations, right? And so I think it's a very appropriate observation you made there, Julie.
Well, it's interesting how different people are receptive to it than others, because I was at a dear friend's yesterday and she's like, I've had 12 geese in my yard, and she's complaining about them tearing up her yard. And I was like, holy cow, that's got to be something. I said, have you looked up the spiritual meaning of geese? And she just ignored me. And it was still bugging me this morning. So I looked it up, and it's like more than 4 geese is a huge spiritual like transformation. Like you're going through a major transformation for the better. And like the geese are very powerful. They migrate, they mate for life, they're loyal, like all these things about the geese.
They're also a representation of the ancestor speaking to you, any type of fowl, any bird.
Oh my gosh. Well, I sent her a link to the spirit, the spirit guide to seeing geese, and she's like, thanks. I was like, okay, she didn't want to hear it. I should have read the signs last night. Everybody comes to it
at their own time, right? Everybody comes to it at their own time.
Well, I said to her, maybe if you acknowledge that you got the message, they'll leave your yard and it can grow back. Like if you're tired of them, you got to say, okay, guys, I got the message, because I've done that for different pests around my house. Like they're pests, but I'll be like, hey guys, it's been cool having you, but it's not safe. My husband's going to, one way or the other, they're going to get rid of you. And they've left. Like I've done that in my house. What
would be funny is that they're not bothering her neighbor's yard and only hers, right? And then you're kind of like,
just on her patch. And she's like, oh, thanks. It wasn't even, oh, thanks. It was just thanks, period, on a text. I'm like, oh.
Okay.
You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like you said on your website, The Seeker. If you're a seeker, come here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
so
tough,
fun.
right? You're seeing an answer for them, but you can't force it. Your job is only to live in your
Oh,
truth and let them figure out theirs, right?
yeah, and I accept that, and I sent love, and I used to take it personally, believe me, but I was just like, oh, that's fine, love and compassion, but it made me laugh because I've been at that place where I'm like, I'm not even going there, like I'm not, but it's so fun to live in that, and like you said, it's the orchestra, it's the realization you're connected to everything, and everything's connected to
Yeah.
you, and it's just a beautiful dance in that moonlight of magic.
Yeah, the magic is there if you're willing to see it, right? But if you're just going to constantly be like, no, okay, well then there's so much that you're going to miss, right? That's out in the world.
Yeah. And that's okay too, you
Yeah.
know? Um, yeah. Well, this has just been delightful, and I will put a link to your website. I'm sure you'll have that on your upcoming events part of your
Yeah,
website for
it's
your
there, yes, for
Okay. So
sure.
if everyone scrolls down, it's like halfway down. At least that's where it was. And I'll put a link to her website so you guys can check that out. Was there anything else you wanted to share today?
No, you know what? I think this has been a fantastic opportunity. Thank you, Julie. It sounds like you are, whether you're aware of it or not, I think you're working with yours too. So, hopefully that's something that starts to open up a bit more for you.
Yes, well, I deeply feel guided to talk to them and bring them in more. I just do a general because I want to be so too specific because I know that at times there's not the availability. And I like how you said to use your main spirit guide as the mediator. That's so beautiful. Because I've done some family tree. I was really into that ancestry.com
Oh yeah.
and I have an ancestor. He was definitely he was harsh. You can tell by his picture. He looks like a redheaded warrior. Like it
Hmm.
looked like he could slay you. You know what I mean? And I mean, my energy probably wouldn't draw him near me, you know? But I was looking at that. I'm like, not all this ancestry thing is all that fun. I'm like, oh, he came over, he would go back and forth. Like there are travel records of him going back and forth from Scotland. And it
It
is
was a
fun.
tough life, right? They lived
Yeah.
a tough life in comparison. So, it's there's a lot of wisdom through those hardships.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so delighted. And I really appreciate I've just had so much fun picking your brain and just learning from you. So thanks for sharing and spending your time with me and the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Mm.